All right, we are back for our second game of our doubleheader today. This game will be starting in just a minute here. It'll be game number 2 between ChrisKelly and Batmouse. ChrisKelly won the first game by 17. They should be getting started here in just a second. So in the first game, ChrisKelly played Old Allies, and he won by 17 over Batmouse's Black Sun. We'll see what they've got for our second game here. Winning by 17, I would assume ChrisKelly's going to play Rops or Map. I don't see the need for him to take any real risks with a off-the-wall kind of deck. I would see Rops being the most likely option. It's performed incredibly well, and even when it doesn't and it loses games, losing by 17 seems unlikely. Hopefully they get started here any second now. I'd like to get this game completed quickly because for the first time in a long time, the Jets are actually playing well, and they're the nationally televised game against the Cowboys, so I get to actually watch them play. And I'd like to get back to this game. But duty calls, so. All right, there's our playoff game. Chris has picked his dark side deck. And we shall see what matchups we've got going on here. And thank you guys for coming back and tuning in for game number 2 today of our doubleheader. This is the last game of the opening round, the round of 16. We already have 3 of our matchups set. We're going to have Silver Glenn versus Justin Branch taking on Joe Olson. We've got Greg Shaw taking on Gavin. And in the other half of the bracket, it's Bastion Winklehouse versus Charlie. They were supposed to play tomorrow, but that game's actually been postponed. I think they're playing Friday now instead. All right, here we go. Batmouse is playing Yavin 4 Ops Restore Freedom, and ChrisKelly is playing Rops. Okay. And Chris Werfs is awaiting the winner of this matchup, and that will be your top 8. So, ChrisKelly playing Ralops, Batmouse playing Yavin 4 Operations. So this particular deck, not one we see all that often, so we'll go through a few of the cards. Once per turn, you can get a battleground system. If rebels control 2 battleground systems, or you just have 4 rebels on table, you flip. While it's flipped, battles at sites related to systems you occupy might come in handy a little bit for if he controls Raltier. You get extra +2 power for each ship. Um, Once during your draw phase, if a system is liberated, you can put a card from your lost pile out of play to retrieve a force. And then you've got this Restore Freedom card, which says if you just initiate a force drain at a battleground system, you draw a Destiny. You add 1 for each of your snub fighters, unique, that are at the system. If your total is greater than 5, opponent loses a card and it gets stacked under the system. And then that makes your drains +1 there. If they drain at that system, they get their card back. Batmouse goes with a new secret base, which also lets him get systems, but it also, more importantly, lets him, if he just drained at a system, he can draw the top card of his reserve deck. And then he's got the old-fashioned squadron assignments to get some matching pilots out. ChrisKelly goes with Endor Shield, Establish Control to pull Fondor, and get extra +1 activation at docking bays, and Imperial and Rest Order to pull those docking bays. So let's see what we got. All right. Yeah, it's halftime, Justin. I don't think they're back from halftime yet. I'm sorry. Since there's 2 of you, since both people are Justins, so um, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Desai. I've got the game paused. I can pause it for a half hour before I start missing out on live action. So hope they just continue to play well and pick up their first win of the season. And congrats to Silver Glenn joining us in the chat. And talking about a possibility of him and Joe for determining their deck matchups, doing something like we had last year, where the players presented 3 different deck options, and then their opponent got to ban one of them, and they got to pick one of the other 2 to play with, to kind of mix things up a little bit, make it more interesting. That would be curious to see again, to see if that happens. So we'll see how that goes. Oh, and you're welcome. Thanks for the commentary. All right, so ChrisKelly's going to get his docking bay first. Now he's going to pull his Fondor, up his activation. I'll probably use his objective here to also get a Raltier site. He started Endor Shield, so he's got enough force. He could put Piet down at the docking bay as well for 2. And use Piet to get Dasan. Dasan starts pulling your shuttles, which could be certainly important to have a bit of a space presence against Y4 ops. Not a deck that's known for being very ground heavy. It is a bit of a more space heavy matchup. You'll probably see these sites get projectioned of a Skywalker at some point to make the drains 0. And we'll see how that goes. Probably be more than a few space battles, but if Robs can stay flipped on the 7 side and they can start adding 3 and 4 to their total battle destinies, that's certainly going to go a long way to clearing out multiple things. Now this is an interesting play. ChrisKelly going first turn, Ozzel to the Spaceport Prefect's office. With Dasan. So he already had Dasan. Okay, so he's not going Piet. Did he use? I was yapping away over here. He took Ozzel and Mahdi with his Endor shield pulls. Okay, so he didn't get. I guess he had Dasan in hand and realized he didn't need to do the Piet pull chain. He could just do this route instead. And he pulls the Imperial Detention Shield. This will basically make him have to pay for Luke on R2 and Red 5. I don't know if there's too much else that'll deploy for free in this deck, but at least in the early turns, that could be having to spend 2 force instead of 0 for Luke. Could be just enough to kind of set Batmouse back a little bit. And he saves a force and moves along. Now, your typical Y4 Ops deck usually runs at least a couple of EPPs to help at least keep them honest on the ground. Obi, Qui-Gon, possibly Rey instead of Qui-Gon because she's a little cheaper, plus she gets the extra retrieval. But with only 8 force and the possibility of 1 saved, that could be for a barrier. Even worst case scenario, one of these guys gets hit by an EPP, the other one still retains their forfeit, which is at least 5. Actually 6, I think, because of the text on the site. Right, yeah, so not really in any danger of overflow here, just in danger of just losing 2 characters, but Batmouse is going to use Walkling and pull a projection of a Skywalker, which he'll then go ahead and throw down on that site. Yep. We're not going to see a lot of ground draining. I'm going to expect, Chris will be able to get to at least one of the sites. It might take Batmouse a little while to find the projection for the second site. But, yeah, I think, Chris will flip probably this turn. Depending on exactly what his hand looks like. He should have 3 or 4 characters in there. I'm sure he can figure out a way to flip and get his guys at least 2 sites, if not all 3. And he'll get a shuttle with Dasan. And looking in the chat, it looks like ChrisKelly may have a Search and Destroy and is floating around in his deck as well, which will certainly increase the damage output on the ground every draw phase, forcing Batmouse to lose a force unless he commits characters to the ground. And that could certainly accelerate things. As we said, Chris won the first game by 17, so trying to losing a game with ROPS by more than that in the current environment is we'll chalk it up as an unlikely task. But if anybody could pull it off, ChrisKelly's the guy. No, I'm just no. So Chris pulls Vader's shuttle with Dasan. He uses his objective and gets the city out for site number 3. And he should have the docking bay somewhere as well, whether that's also in there and he'll get it now, or whether that's active and he'll just have to find it later. All right. And now he'll go for the flip. Blizzard 4 goes to the city, and it's going to get him somebody for free, most likely Vader or possibly maybe just Tarkin. Grand Inquisitor, okay, so another relatively expensive character who's coming out for free because of Blizzard 4. This guy's pretty cool, and he's one of your Twitch subscriber foils. I believe he's the 3-month foil, so for those of you subscribing to our Twitch channel, Make sure and send me your screenshots when you get to 3, 6, and 12 months. And then you get some foils mailed out to you. Grand Inquisitor for month 3, Ezra Bridger for month 6, and month 12 is the I Want That Map objective, which some people should be coming up on pretty soon. But there's the Grand Inquisitor's text. And here comes Krennic to the street, and that will flip. And he gets to go get any card he wants out of his reserve deck with 22 cards there to choose from. And now he'll put Mahdi down as well. I'm sure we'll see the Inquisitor get out of the Blizzard 4. And then Chris will just pay maintenance and maybe draw one. And there's the Search and Destroy also coming down, and the Oppressive Enforcement shield, which also comes out. So that way, if the Search and Destroy, which is not immune to alter, if it were to get altered somehow, it would go back used, and then it would be available to continue to cause damage output. But this card, during each draw phase, so light side and dark side, unless they have a character of destiny less than 4 at a battleground site, they lose a force. And that's not an optional action, it's a mandatory, it's a required action, so Jemp will automatically enforce it even if Chris doesn't click the button. And Batmouse loses a copy of We Wish to Board It Once from hand. Alright, so Batmouse went to look for a system and did not find it. He does have his second projection, so that's going to help keep him around a little bit longer. Chris did use up most of his force. He is going to deploy Luke. He just got to look at his deck so he knows what ships are in there to match up for. And Chris has played all 4 shields. He's got Secret Plans out, but not Coward. So Luke will come down for a total of 6. Ghost in Narshada, where it's a drain +1 system. And this Luke Skywalker here is the one that retrieves a force when he's piloting at a battleground. Doesn't have to be just in space. He could be piloting like a speeder or something on the ground and still gets to do the retrieval. And now he'll go to draw phase. And he's going to lose Anakin from the used pile. And now he's going to go ahead and pick up a couple cards. Neither player has pulled the battle plan shield. I would if you're light side, I don't know you want to pull it at this point, because I mean you're getting the better end of it. You're getting a free drain of 2, whereas they're getting a drain of 1, which you're retrieving the force with Luke. So I don't think you need to pull the battle plan shield. we've seen a couple people play Expand the Empire on the prefix office to expand this text, but the way the sites are laid out, I'm going to guess Chris may not necessarily. Oh, I mean, you can put the docking bay over here, I guess, if he still has that. Um, but the way the sites are kind of laid out, usually the prefix office would be more in the middle. This should have gone over here then. I don't know. But again, yes, he should still have the docking bay to get his fourth site that he could expand the text on the prefix office, which says if you're Imperial leader here, Imperials at same and related sites are power and forfeit +1. Since most of his guys are Imperial leaders, if he expands that text to adjacent sites, then it basically makes all his guys power and forfeit +3, which makes it even more difficult to interact with and cause overflow. I mean, the ability for them to exchange with the lost pile to get interrupts and to get the GIC back and things if it should happen to be lost kind of becomes a little less important when all your guys, yeah, there's the docking bay, when all your guys are, forfeiting for 8 and 10 apiece and your power, a dozen or so with just 2 or 3 characters. Okay, and here comes the Emperor's shuttle going right in front of Luke. We'll see if Batmouse has a barrier or an answer or anything for that, and whether or not Chris also has Thrawn. I would expect in this kind of matching Starfighter deck, you'd see a couple of X-Wing cannons. And that could always be a cause of concern for this Emperor Shuttles package. It's only maneuver 3, so it's incredibly easy. It's immune to attrition, less than 214 billion, or yeah, 2 billion, 147 million. Yeah. Okay, here comes Thrawn. This is the guy who protects weapons. He's very important. Lose a force to cancel a just drawn weapon destiny targeting a starship he is piloting. And he was deployed as a passenger. And he gets barriered. So he put him as a passenger, and he's putting Piet as a pilot. So Thrawn not in the pilot seat. We'll see if that comes back to haunt ChrisKelly next turn. I would assume since he's adding 3 to his destiny, he's got enough ability here. He's getting 2 draws. It seems incredibly likely that this whole thing is going to end up becoming lost. He's going to draw 2 destiny. He just has to be, and he's going to add 3 to the total. And he just has to be higher than 7 to get rid of Luke and take the ship along with it. But with this thing being, it can hold 4 passengers. Okay, I was going to say with it being full now, he doesn't have a spot to move people around. But he does have 1 empty spot available. So as long as he doesn't put anybody else aboard that, he would be able to, on a future turn, swap Mithrandu and Piet around. And he does play Rapid Fire, which is the card if battle just initiated, deploy for free a weapon from reserve deck. That would be the way to get the X-Wing cannon out of the deck. But Kyrkanos is there, and Kyrkanos uses his once per game ability to cancel it, which is what you guys were just talking about in the chat as speculation for what might happen. Chris gets his 2 destiny draws. He draws Expand and the GIC for 5, plus 3 becomes a total of 8, which is Luke only forfeits for 7, so he just gets by Luke's forfeit. And there is the X-Wing cannon. So Batmouse actually wins the battle 13-12. And Chris will have to lose a card. Probably just lose the GIC from the used pile. Yep, so now he's got access to it to exchange it should he ever need it. Which at this point I don't know that he will. Chris doesn't have to forfeit anything. Batmouse loses Luke and the X-Wing. I'm sure he's got 2 copies of each of those in there. So I'm sure we'll see Luke make a return at some point. If not, I would expect to see him put Wackling out of play here to get one of them back if he didn't have extras. And he hasn't done that yet. And with 1 force left, will he leave the shuttle there? Will he move it away for a turn? It would seem to make sense moving the ship away for a turn. You're not getting the drains really. The drain damage isn't that important right now anyway. And you can move these guys from the street to the docking bay if you want, just to get the extra potential 1 damage in, but you're not going to pay to drain this turn. And with Thrawn in the wrong spot, I would move it away. And ChrisKelly does. Yeah. Go sit over here for a turn. Let Batmouse do whatever he wants over here. Flip your guys around to put Thrawn in the pilot seat where now your ship can't get shot. And then you can move it back out somewhere later. Bounce these guys over. Yeah. And Batmouse will lose another card to search and destroy. And he throws away an It's a Hit from his hand after Chris moves his guys over to the docking bay. He doesn't have any force left available, though, for Blizzard Force maintenance, so that card is going to go out of play now. It's a little bit of a setback, but not really, as we've said. These guys have good power and forfeit. I mean, the Grand Inquisitor's 6 power. He forfeits for 8 if he's not hit. Even if he is hit, you're still adding 4 to your total battle destiny, so he's already covering at least 10, plus whatever the card you actually draw. Mathematically, you always assume it's a 3, possibly 3.5 is about the average for most decks these days. Light side being a little higher, dark side usually. So we assume he's going to cover at least 13 or 14. It's going to be hard for Batmouse to drop and do any more than that. All right, so Batmouse uses the War Room text to try and deploy a rebel and misses. Is unsuccessful with that. He's going to play Jedi Levitation, the Lost version. He's going to pay 3 to retrieve Luke from the Lost pile into hand, and then he's going to reveal Luke again with Squadron assignments, get the other R2 and Red 5, and deploy them over here at Aquarius. Yep. Justin, you got completely hit the nail right on the head. It's an excellent strategy that Chris has taken here, and he's really in the driver's seat in this game. And as we said, with winning the first game by 17, it was already an uphill battle for Batmouse, and things have not gone well for him in the early goings here. Luke does retrieve a card at turn, so that'll certainly give him a little bit of ability to kind of extend the game a little bit, but he's going to be bleeding out a bunch of cards pretty soon, and that's just going to get him down below that threshold. Chris will pay to drain. Doesn't really have a whole lot else he needs to do this turn. Rebel artillery gets discarded from hand. Pay to drain at the other site. Shuffle your guys around. There goes an X-Wing cannon off the top as well. There goes Piet to the passenger seat. Thrawn is now piloting, which he must be in order to use his weapon canceling text. And he's going to drop Min Kun, which also gets him an extra shield pull. See if he pulls Coward here. That would seem to make the most sense. Force Batmouse to get to a second location before you can start retrieving. Yep, he gets a shield pull. He's going to pull Firepower. Interesting. And I'm sure we'll see Chris move the shuttle out to one of the other systems that's a battleground and draw 4 or 5 cards. Chris has got 30 cards left down, plus 3 in hand for 33 total remaining. Batmouse is at 26 and 9, which is 35, so he's still technically ahead, but he's about to lose a card here in the draw phase. But just in terms of total board control, obviously Chris has a lot more presence on the board, and he's in a lot better position in terms of damage potential and output. So now, by moving the shuttle over, he's getting these drains for free of 1 and 1. Potentially this drain here, because this thing's going to be very difficult to deal with, for a drain of 2, so that's 4, plus Search and Destroy, causing a damage on each turn. Would be 6 points of damage per sequence of turns. And over here, you just have it's a drain of 1 and 1 retrieval. Surprised he pulled the Firepower Shield. I mean, the Firepower Shield lets him retrieve cards, but he doesn't really have a Lost Pile or anything yet. So I'm surprised he's more concerned about this than Coward just stopping Luke's retrieval and forcing Batmouse to go to a second battleground. There's a good chance we may see Batmouse deploy any of his ground characters to this site now. It's unlikely he'd be able to flip Chris back unless he also deploys a ship and moves over to Valtir. He's got enough force to do it, but at the same side, that could certainly be problematic. Alright, so he does draw the 5, so it does get stacked, so he will be a drain of 1 there. Chris will have to lose a card and stack it under Aquarius. And Chris stacks a card from hand, and then has a drain of 1 now because the drain is +1. at each liberated system. He throws away an Emperor Palpatine. Also lets Batmouse draw the top card of his reserve deck by completing the Force Drain at a battleground system. There's We Wish to Board It Once that he's going to play. There is no card available for him to pull with that. And it gets a Radiant 7, which would usually get Obi in Radiant 7. Or it could pull a copy of itself if there were extra copies in there. Just a way to cycle back a card. Batmouse will set up himself a decent Destiny so he can try and liberate more systems in the future, now knowing that where that 5 is. Oh, he's attempting to revert here. And Chris is going to ask why. Oh, it looks like he forgot to retrieve with Luke in the control phase. So he's asking if he can. He moved to his deploy phase. He's asking if he can go back. And it looks like Chris is going to be the nice guy and let him do it. Okay, so Luke gets to retrieve the Force, which he will pay 1, and he gets the Rebel Artillery back, so he puts a 7 now, where he can track to it as well. Exactly. Destiny 7 is 7 cards from the bottom. And 5 cards from the bottom is a Destiny 5. Alright, here comes Kessel. And he's going to Yavin 4 operations to deploy Naboo. Is he playing Hidden Base here? He's got 5 systems on the table. He's playing the wrong deck. So he's got lots of systems. Does he have lots of ships and matching guys to put at these systems? Alright, so Obi and Radiant 7 is going to go to Aquarius. I'm sure Luke is going to end up moving. That way he can try and liberate. Yep. Now he's at a second battleground system. And now he can try to liberate a different system. And in the meantime, Obi can continue getting an actual drain of 1 in. And Search and Destroy will now cause the 1 ping damage. He loses. It's on automatic pilot. This is the Search and Destroy for space, right? Yeah. During any draw phase, opponent loses 1 force unless they occupy a battleground system. Effect lost if you do not occupy 2 battleground systems with Republic starships. There's not a lot of Republic starships. Obviously, Obi-Wan and Radiant 7 is a Republic starship. You've got Rick in Queen's ship. You've got Bravo Fighter. That both of those ships also have permanent pilots in them, so they don't need matching characters. And then you've got the matching Bravo Fighter guys. Rick Ollie, Bravo 1, and some of the other officer guys and lieutenants for Bravos 2 through 5. One of them gets a drain bonus at Naboo. One of them makes each of their Destiny draws -2. I think that's Officer Dolphy who goes with Bravo 2, I believe. But I don't know what else Batmouse would really be able to get out of that stuff. And he's going to play an all wings here, and he's going to take the Pulsar Skate into hand from reserve deck. This is just the old generic Pulsar Skate. And then he'll play Rescue in the Clouds to get another card from his reserve deck into hand. All this during the activate phase before... This is going to shuffle this deck now, though, so now he's going to lose track of those 5s and 7s he put back the previous turn. They'll still be in there, but he's going to get drained for 2, 1, and 1 for a total of 4. He controlled Tunnel Visions the drain of 2, so he only loses 1 card instead of 2. Yeah, as usual, I agree with you, Mr. Desai. Seems like he's putting a lot of cards on the table for a deck that's trying to win by at least 17. Maybe he, playing a deck he just feels comfortable with and figures he'll just try and just win a game and maybe not necessarily win the match. Knowing that it was already going to be an uphill battle and there was a pretty decent chance Chris would play Rops, and there's not a lot of decks that beat Rops by more than 17. I don't know if there's really any deck that beats Rops by, 20 plus cards. We'll say it's unlikely. But yeah, certainly a curious deck choice by Batmouse. Okay. And ChrisKelly is going to deploy Vader's Shuttle to Kessel. Not only will, and the Binder. So the Binder being a capital means it cannot be shot by X-Wing cannons. So this would be a good one to put some pilots on. It also requires opponent to move a starship from here requires +1 force if they want to try to run away. He's going to add Tarkin to the Binder as well. Also let your ships move to there as a react. And he puts Marek Steel down as well. Opponent may not cancel or substitute Battle Destiny draws here. That's going to shut down. Yep. The all wings combo, and Batmouse is going to head and just go ahead and throw in the towel here. He was already in a bad spot, and this is Luke's going to get cleared out again. And he's going to go ahead and throw in the towel and concede. So ChrisKelly will be our last person to advance into the quarterfinals, where he will take on Chris Werfs. And we'll go ahead and get the bracket updated later tonight and see when people are going to start getting those games scheduled for the upcoming 2-week period. Thank you guys all very much for tuning in and joining us this evening. And we will see you in the coming days. Thanks for watching, and have a great night.